My name is Hazel Mullisham and this is the Light on Leeds podcast. My guests today are Spike Marshall and Francesca Butler. They're both members of Leeds Arts Cenrtre. Spike and Fran tell me about Rope, a play by Patrick Hamilton, further immortalised by the Alfred Hitchock film. It's Spike's directorial debut and we chat about that, and Fran tells me about her role and having only moved to Leeds in April, and much, much more. Enjoy! On this episode of the Light on Leeds podcast, I have Spike Marshall and Fran Butler come to speak to me. They are both members of Leeds Arts Cenrtre. So hello, Spike, and hello, Fran.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming to speak to me today. So Spike, I'm going to start with you. So can you tell me a little bit about, first of all, Leeds Arts Cenrtre?
So Leeds Arts Cenrtre is a amateur dramatic society. It's been running for 75 years. It actually had its 75th birthday last year.
Wow.
And it's part of a wider community of art groups called the Leeds Community Arts Network. But Leeds Arts Cenrtre is very much about putting kind of like dramatic plays on. And so we tend to run about four or five shows a year, and kind of like, and they tend to be more kind of, they actually tend to be very variable. We've had Shakespeare's in the past, we've had modern plays, we've had people doing classics. If you kind of go to our website, you can see the archive of kind of like what Leeds Arts Cenrtre's been doing.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a really nice group because it's fairly tight knit. There's about 80 odd members, but they're all exceptionally passionate, and it kind of means that like we're doing kind of amdram stuff, but it's done with a real passion and a real kind of like flair, and so it kind of means that like it always feels like you're really kind of doing just great work.
Yeah.
But it's also really nice in terms of the developmental stuff. I can talk a bit later about kind of like how pleased I've been about how like older and more experienced members of Leeds Arts Cenrtre have mentored kind of like the newer kind of like cast members and crew members. But that's Leeds Arts Cenrtre.
Oh, fantastic. And Fran, can I ask you, when did you get involved in Leeds Arts Cenrtre?
So I'm a newbie. I moved to Leeds in April, and then I joined Leeds Arts Cenrtre in May, I think. I just found them by Googling, and I went along to one of the play readings and talked to some people, and I thought it was really great. I wanted to be involved, and then I auditioned for Rope. I've forgotten when the auditions for Rope were, Spike, but
mid-July.
Mid-July, okay, yeah.
Fantastic. And would you say that it is a good way then, to move to a new city? Is it a good way, would you say, to find friends and sort of feel part of something?
Yeah, definitely. People do quite a few social things around Leeds Arts Cenrtre because it's just a nice way to meet people who are like-minded. Like Spike said,
yeah,
people are really passionate about making good plays, and that kind of helps you meet like-minded people, and then you have similar interests and can kind of go from there. And often people go for a drink or something as well after a play reading, and that's just a nice, more casual way to chat to people.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so, Spike, can you tell me a little bit about the production that has been putting on between the 8th and 11th of November at the Carriageworks is Rope. So did you choose that, Spike?
Yeah, so it's essentially Leeds Arts Centre's very, very director-driven in the sense that like the committee who runs the Leeds Arts Cenrtre don't really choose the plays. They have people put proposals in.
Right.
And so, like I said, we have about 4 slots a year, and it kind of means that everything we're doing is very director-driven. So and you can really see that in terms of like the previous plays that were on this year. So we had Scarborough, which was directed by Enya Lucas, and that was a very modern play, and it was about like a sexual relationship between kind of like a teacher and a student, and really making people examine their kind of feelings about things. And then he was really passionate about doing that project because of personal reasons. Then we had Chicken Soup, which was another more modern play, and which was about the miners' wives during the miners' strike in the 1980s and how they bonded running a soup kitchen. And then and that was directed by Zoe Friedman. And then we had Laurie Toczek do a very lavish and big adaptation of The Moonstone, which was a big throwback kind of periody kind of thing. And so that really shows how kind of changeable the content that Leeds Arts Cenrtre does. And so I directed what was called a green room, which was like essentially a testing ground. So it's done kind of like in private, and it's only for members of a play called God of Carnage. And I really wanted to get back into it, so I was kind of trying to work out what my next step was. And I picked Rope because I was very, very aware of the Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
And I thought it was such a great concept. And when I went back to read the play it was based on, I just thought it was like exceptionally well written and just really fun, and also just a nice next step up, because with plays there's kind of almost tiers of difficulty and complexity. So God of Carnage was 4 characters. This is 8 characters, but there's no scene changes. It's essentially one continuous run.
Okay.
And so it kind of got like a next natural step up. And then the next play I'm going to direct is going to be 12 characters with scene changes and stuff. And it's a case of like just trying to find your limits. But yeah, like there was just so much stuff that came from, like when I was reading the play and when we did. So we do play readings, which sometimes we just do for fun, where essentially we'll have like members of LAC just come spend an evening just going through and reading a play from start to finish with roles getting switched up. And a lot of the time we just do them just because we want to hear a play being read, but sometimes the director will kind of choose to do one to essentially kind of see how it kind of like will work as a play. And when I did the reading for Rope, I could already see kind of like the structure of it and the dynamics of it and the power of it coming through, and so it was really exciting. So yeah, I picked Rope, and that's kind of the reason why.
And can you tell me a little bit, Fran, about your character in the play?
Yeah, so I play a character called Leila Arden. She is a socialite, and she enjoys using big words and charming people, and just having fun, really. And she's come along to this dinner party with the intention of having a good time and maybe having a bit of a flirt. But over the course of the evening, things start to feel a bit strange. And people are talking about murder in a bit of an overly serious way, and I think she starts to feel that something isn't quite right. But she's a very fun character to play because she has a lot of extravagant comedic moments, but also she is caring, and when she feels like somebody is in a vulnerable position, she wants to reach out to them and make sure that they're okay. So she's definitely got those layers, and that's really fun to play.
I bet it is, yeah. So you mentioned a murder. Spike, can you tell me a little bit about kind of the premise of the play, but obviously don't spoil it for anybody who's going to be going to see it or who hasn't previously seen the film?
Okay, so Rope is about 2 students who have murdered a fellow student, and they've done it kind of not for malice. They don't hate this person they've murdered. They don't really dislike this person they've murdered. They've gained nothing from doing the murder, but they've done it to prove to themselves that they can commit murder and that they have to act. And So they've done this murder. They've put the body into a chest, and they're now holding a dinner party where food has been and drinks are being served off of the chest where the body is sort of
Oh
interred.
gosh. So is the idea that they're just trying to get away with this so the guests don't realise?
Yeah, there's the central dynamic is that the two murderers, one is a woman called Wynne Brandon, and the other is a man called Charles Granillo. And Charles is the more practical of the two, and is just wanting to essentially dump the body in the river and kind of be done with it. Wynne has done this to prove a point to herself, to essentially
Right.
the point of her superiority. And so when they put the body into the chest and have these people over, it's Wynne's essentially showing that she's superior to society, that she's superior to everybody, because she knows that like people can't question it, and even if she's acting strange or acting mysterious or weird, it's kind of something that they can't question. And so it's a complete power play where Wynne is essentially antagonizing all of her guests into trying to figure out what's going on, but she also knows that they really can't. So one of the things I've said to the cast a couple of times in the play is that like rope's got a bunch of meanings. So rope is like what they use to strangle kind of the Ronald Kentley, their victim. Rope is the thing that's a threat to them because they could hang if they're found. But rope's also the social weapon that Wynne Brandon uses against people to tie them down. So she does really kind of insane things and says really horrible, macabre things, and everyone's so polite because it's like late 1920s society
Mhm.
that they have to just grin and bear it. And the only person who doesn't is this wounded war veteran who's so like broken that he's doesn't play by the societal rules, and so he's kind of their foil throughout the play.
That sounds really fascinating. And so, am I right in thinking that you changed the gender of one of the main characters?
Yeah, so as written, Brandon and Granillo are two men, two young students, and because Leeds Arts Centre's got quite a strong kind of cohort of female actors, I really didn't want to essentially kind of like direct a play where fundamentally of the eight characters, only two of them were women, and of those two, one didn't speak. And so it didn't sit right with me having a play that sort of leaned that way. And
Mm-hmm.
as I went back to kind of read the text, like Wynne Brandon just kind of lent himself to being a woman a lot. As there's a serpentine quality to Wynne, and there's an intellectual quality to Wynne, which means that I made the decision to switch, and I was thinking, okay, we're going to have to do a lot of work to make sure this actually reads correctly. And to be honest, as soon as like Lizzie Rellin's kind of like got the character in her head who's playing Brandon, it just it was amazing because we've not had to change anything. It's just
Wow.
a character that kind of that just reads so well as a woman, and like Lizzie's been able to like do so much power. And I was chatting to her yesterday after rehearsals, and she was just saying that kind of like how exciting it was to be as an actress to be able to get a role like Wynne Brandon, which is kind of a very big, very complex, very kind of dark role that's
Mm-hmm.
often don't get as actresses. So yeah, it was a change that I wanted to make for practical reasons, and it's just turned out to be like one of the real artistic keystones of the actual show, almost surprisingly so, and I'm really pleased with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great how it's worked out. And with this being your first sort of directorial role, have there been things that have surprised you about the process, or things that you found difficult that you didn't expect to, or vice versa?
So yeah, the big surprise for me is that like I wasn't expecting the process to be as easygoing as it is. Now, that's not to say that it's easy because essentially you're kind of trying to make something that's as close to a professional production in your spare time as you can. So
Yeah.
there's been lots of sleepless nights and lots of admin and lots of thinking about things. But I was really expecting to kind of have to kind of control like the rehearsal room a tiny bit more or try and really pull people into the vision or have to be a bit more combative about things just because you never quite know how people are going to react. But the actors, when I was talking to them about the vision, just seemed to kind of like align with that vision so well. And I was exceptionally lucky to have essentially 8 actors who were exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally emotionally open, and exceptionally excited to essentially take on the vision that I presented to them with Rope. And what's happened is over the last 3 months, what started as my pitch has now become something that I think everyone's got real ownership of, and it's just been a real joy because like the process has just been so engaging and challenging and fun, but challenging in good ways.
Yeah.
And so Fran has done a really good job as well of essentially kind of taking a character who, as written, is quite specifically written in a way that I never liked, and she just adding kind of like levels of kind of humanity and depth to that character in ways that just surprised me so much, and it's just made it a really beautiful kind of like piece of character work.
And how do you feel about that, Fran? Do you feel the same, that you've taken a character who can be read one way and you've sort of interpreted her yourself?
Yeah, so Spike's been very focused on introducing like a collaborative element to the rehearsals, which has been really great. So he's very encouraging of listening to our thoughts about our characters and our instincts, and if we're ever not comfortable with a moment or it feels a bit awkward for the character to say something in that way or move in that way, then he's very open to hearing what we think and how we want it to be. And also I think he's good at looking for our instincts, so there might be moments in the play where I would make a certain facial expression, and then Spike kind of wanted to go into that more deeply and kind of run with it and be like, oh, there you acted that in a way where she was more empathetic towards that person, and what does that mean, where's that coming from, and sort of build on that more, and then it just means that you can kind of work together to get a more complex character. And I think that's been the same from what I've seen for every character. So it just means that it's a really rewarding process, because you feel like you have that like not responsibility, but kind of that ownership of your role, and you can work together to really bring out the best.
Yeah, that sounds like a really positive process. And Spike, you are on the autistic spectrum. How would you say that has sort of coloured the way that you've approached this?
So it's interesting. So I kind of made the joke to Fran about being on this kind of podcast, saying we could do it as the autist and the artist, because I don't really view myself as being someone who is kind of like particularly artistic myself, but I really enjoyed the process of kind of getting behind the scenes and seeing the structure and seeing how things kind of all click together. So I was very good friends with Camilla Asher, who directed a play called Dinner back in 2022, and she invited me to be her assistant director. And I was absolutely fascinated by that process and really wanted to try it out. And essentially, as someone who's autistic, you can kind of like get boxed in as being kind of a bit robotic or a bit unemotional or a bit kind of just, someone who's very logically thinking. And whilst I don't like to play into those kind of tropes, I recognize that kind of like the one thing I think I've been able to give to kind of like actors in God of Carnage and in Rope is a structure. Yeah. So my style's been much less about kind of like trying to be dictatorial about what I'm wanting. So I very rarely say, I want you to move here and move here or move here. But my style's been very much about kind of, I create the schedules, I create the kind of structure about rehearsals, I lay the rules down about how I want things to be done. So we do warm-ups, we do games. And then what I'm trying to do is create kind of like a sandbox, which allows the actors to be experimental and creative and take risks and take challenges. And my structure to that kind of like gives them safety and gives them kind of a through line on that. So essentially kind of like I'm kind of making sure that all the gears in the machine are turning correctly and everything's moving towards one final goal. And they're getting to do kind of like the big experimental swings with what they're doing and getting to really explore things and thinking about nuance. And so, yeah, for me, it's been a really interesting process because it's been almost able to kind of weaponize kind of like the overly logical mind for good. And there's also a character in the play called Rupert Goodell, who is the World War One veteran I spoke about kind of earlier. And myself and Brian have had kind of like a lot of conversations about this because there's an element of the play that he's essentially a social outcast, and that kind of like his kind of like style and way of being and terseness and tone kind of puts everyone on edge, and they kind of all just like freeze him out. And there was a really nice interview with Fern Brady where she was talking about how like unthinkingly callous like neurotypical people can be to outsiders, that essentially as soon as you break those rules everyone just closes ranks. And I've really liked exploring ideas around that whilst also not making Cadell an autistic character, but kind of exploring kind of like how people kind of close ranks and kind of ice people out and what that does to people and kind of like what that pushes people into being. And kind of so that's been a really rewarding thing for me, of almost kind of exercising this element from myself in a way.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely fascinating. So can I ask, obviously it's been quite a process, and like you said, you've had rehearsals and all of the work that everybody's put into it. So is it in equal parts exciting and terrifying as you come to it actually being, shown to the public? How do you both feel about that?
Yeah, I'm excited, and it's always a bit terrifying, and I think that's part of it for me. Is sort of is the kind of collective like mania and terror and excitement as it builds towards the first show. And yeah, I kind of love that, but obviously Spike's coming at that from a different angle because he has the most responsibility, I guess.
Yeah. And how do you feel about it, Spike?
So I really don't want this to sound like arrogant, but I'm like just excited more than anything else. I've got so much faith in like the work that the cast have done, the work that my props team are doing, the work that the set team are doing, kind of that. I genuinely feel that kind of like watching a rehearsal yesterday and seeing how much it clicked and seeing how much the actors kind of understood their characters. I'm just excited to kind of unleash this on the world because I'm so proud of what the actors have done, and I just really want them to have that moment of essentially being able to kind of show to people like all of the good and strong work they've done. And like it's that kind of thing of like you would expect to be having sleepless nights about it, that like worrying about it whatsoever, but there's just like I said, I've been so impressed by kind of the dedication of every single person here that I've just got this almost unreasonable level of confidence in the show. I just think it's going to be astounding, and as someone who's a very socially anxious person, a very anxious person in general, it's actually kind of astounding that I just have no concerns whatsoever about this, just because they're doing such an amazing job.
I think that's great. I just think it shows your strength of feeling, and it just sounds like it's your calling, Spike.
I think I would probably agree with that. I think Spike has maybe been overly humble by saying that he's kind of just put in the mechanics of it. He definitely has given us a sandbox, but he's also been very caring towards kind of picking up when people might be feeling a bit tired, or when I was coming down with something, Spike was like, "Are you okay? I feel like you don't look like you're very well." And then I ended up getting ill, and like no one else had said to me that I seemed like I was going to get ill. And he's been very like he's had chats with us a lot to make sure that we're happy with the process and see how we're feeling. So he's definitely been very caring as well, and also he lived and breathed rope for months and months, and I feel like it's not just the mechanics. He's rope.
Oh, that's lovely. So can I ask you both, just before I go on to the 3 questions that I ask every guest, I don't know if perhaps you want to address this, Spike. So for people who are listening, can you sort of give them a quick couple of sentences as to why they should definitely come and see your play?
So I think they should come and see the play because it's an amazing example of what non-professional actors can do. I think that kind of like it's a really professional show where we've kind of taken a play that was very well written and we've remixed it in a way that's really fascinating, and that the acting is just intelligent and kind of emotive and just very powerful. The costumes by a first-time costume designer at Jay Lockwood are just really, really well done. The set's going to be absolutely beautiful. The props are really well done. And it's just a really beautiful example of what happens when amateurs, which isn't a dirty word, pull together and make something that I think is actually going to be quite special.
I think that's a really great way to sum it up. You've definitely sold me anyway. So I asked Fran earlier, and you said that, Fran, that you have only lived here since April, so you're quite new. I'm sure you've had enough time to have a look around. But Spike, I haven't asked you. Have you always lived in Leeds?
So my family is from Bradford, but I was kind of born in Brighton and then kind of moved back up slowly. And so essentially, I've kind of lived in Bradford. I've lived in Nottingham, lived a couple of other places, and then and I've been in Leeds for like the last 6 or 7 years. But if you live in West Yorkshire, Leeds is always the pull point, I think. So even when I wasn't living in Leeds, I kind of was very Leeds based.
Yeah. So that means that you definitely, even though you've only been here since April, Fran, I feel like you're both qualified to answer the 3 questions. The first question being, what would you say is great about the city of Leeds?
Leeds Arts Cenrtre is great about the city of Leeds.
That's a really good one, and you've definitely told us why that is the case. And Spike, what would you go for?
So I think what's great about the city of Leeds is the fact that it's kind of a bit of a melting pot in the sense that it's such a big university town that kind of it always feels like there's new ideas and new kind of things coming in. And so it's quite an exciting and vibrant city in that way. And as someone who loves live music, loves theatre, loves kind of film, it's really nice that what is actually a comparatively small town has such a bustling music scene, has international film festivals, has so many theatre options. And I think it is because of that constant turnaround of people coming into the city.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Obviously, especially seeing as my podcast is so culture focused. I would completely agree with that. And if you had to choose something that is not so great about the city, what would you choose?
I would say it's the transport links between the different parts of Leeds. So it's quite easy to get into the city centre, which is good. But then it's kind of hard to get from where I live to the other areas surrounding the city centre.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, Fran, that is the most common answer.
Is it?
Yeah, I'd say it's 95 to 98% of people say that. So it's definitely, I completely agree. There's been times when I want to get to somewhere, I don't drive, And
Either.
sometimes I want to get to somewhere that should really not take me very long, but because of the
Yeah.
way the transport links are, it takes much longer than perhaps it should do.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of talking about the arts and putting things on in different places. It just makes it more difficult to do something outside of the city centre as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And what about you, Spike? What would you choose?
So, like, going from what I was saying is a good thing, I think that constant turnover of people is a very good thing in terms of creating a vibrant energy. But I also think that it kind of creates almost a lack of permanence. And so I
Mhm.
think sometimes it feels like Leeds doesn't have an actual strong, persistent community now.
Yeah,
And that kind of like sometimes you walk around kind of like areas which are a bit more kind of transient, as in there are students who live there for 2 or 3 years, and it kind of just feels like maybe because they're only there temporarily and they're only there part of the year, they don't kind of like look after the community or even build that community in ways that kind of like more kind of grounded people would. And that's not
yeah,
really a diss on students or anything. It's just that the nature of kind of like those cycles means that these communities are quite prefab. They'll be there for a couple of years and then they'll get burnt down and then start again. It kind of feels like Leeds doesn't have a permanence to it.
Mm.
yeah, yeah. I could see what you're saying there. And if somebody had been a resident of Leeds for a very long time, would you be able to tell them about something that you would consider to be a hidden gem that they might never have heard of?
I don't think no, I don't think I could.
Well, it's difficult for you, so
Yeah,
you can just sort
I
of be
could
like,
say
fine,
Leeds
and we'll
Arts
just
Centre
confuse.
again.
You can go for that. Yeah, that's fine. And what about you, Spike? Is there anything that you think people may not have heard of?
So I'm going to be a bit boring and talk about another theatre company, I'm afraid. But there's a
That's fine.
fascinating group called the Invisible Pain Theatre Company, and I'm not entirely sure if you've encountered them before. But they are a very small kind of uh, very small theatre company, and what they do is that they use theatre as part of mental health practice, and so they're essentially using theatre and drama skills to help people work through mental health crisis or work through mental health issues, and they put on a couple of shows a year. But it is much more about kind of almost using kind of theatre as therapy, and the discussions I've had with them have been absolutely fascinating, and I just think they're a very worthy cause. They're doing what looks to be absolutely amazing work, and I think just the idea of essentially arts therapy is so important. And so, yeah, the Invisible Pain Theatre Company, I definitely would like to give them a shout out because I feel like they put on very interesting shows. They do very good work.
That sounds fantastic. I haven't actually come across them, but I will put a link to their details in the
Oh,
podcast notes.
I thought of one.
Yeah.
So I think most people will have heard of Hyde Park Book Club on Hyde
Yes.
Park Corner, but this guy called Theo hosts an open mic night on the first Monday of every month, I
Okay.
think, and it's poetry and or music and like anything that you want to do in it, and it's a really nice, welcoming space for people who want to try out something new and have a nice audience for it.
Oh, that sounds
So
absolutely brilliant. Well found, Fran, at the last second.
yeah.
um, it's been absolutely great speaking with you both. And I always ask guests whether they know of anybody who would, or who's a musician or in a band, and whether there's a track that you'd like to feature. And Fran, can you tell me what track you chose and who it's by and why you went for this track?
Yeah, so this is a track called Princess Nokofia by one of my good friends, Alex Rushfirth. But I really liked this song before we were good friends, so I've not only chosen it for that reason. Um, and yeah, I just think it's obviously a very beautiful song. And I think his lyrics are gorgeous. He's from Leeds, and he gigs in and around Leeds. He's going to be gigging a bit more, and I promise you the song is even better live.
Fantastic.
And he's got a really good stage presence, and it'd be good to see him do some more gigs. So.
Oh, well, I hope I get to see him. I really enjoy the song. And Spike, what will you be doing with the rest of your day today?
So I'm going to be braving the rainstorm later this evening to go to Leeds Playhouse to see a show called One Song, which is a 1 hour continuous piece of music by a Belgian artist whose name escaped me right now. But essentially, it's just a very big riotous thing about kind of like sports teams and stuff. And I'm hoping it's going to be a hoot and a laugh. And it looks, in actuality, kind of like it's a pay what you feel thing as well at the Playhouse, which is quite unusual. So I'm really interested to see how it is.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And what about you, Fran? What are your plans for the rest of today?
Well, I've got that doctor's appointment that I also have to brave the rainstorm for.
That's right, yeah.
And then I'm following Spike to the same show.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I hope you have a brilliant evening. I hope everything goes fantastically with Rob. I'm coming to see it myself, so I'm really excited. You've definitely sold it brilliantly well. And I've been to a few performances by Leeds Arts Cenrtre at the Carriageworks, and I agree with you. I think they're fantastic. The ones I've seen I've really enjoyed. So good luck with everything. And thank you so much for coming to speak to me about it. And I'll put lots of information in the podcast notes so that people can come along and see the wonderful play, Rob.
Thank you. It's been lovely to chat, and really excited about it. I've heard I've seen the final scene be rehearsed a lot of times now, but every time I see it, it just takes me by surprise, and I'm fully involved. And the other actors are doing an amazing job. So.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, well, you've definitely sold it. So thank you so much, both of you. And I'll see you soon.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So fascinating talking to Spike and Fran. Rob is being performed at the Carriageworks Theatre from the 8th to the 11th of November. Fran chose to feature the beautiful track Princess Nokofia by her good friend Alex Rushfirth. There's lots of links in the podcast notes as usual, so you can get tickets to the play, read more about Leeds Arts Cenrtre, check out more of Alex's music, etc. It's a rainy old autumn day, Leeds, so wrap up, keep warm and look after yourself. Until next time.
The guy on the TV show is getting old, the guy in the mirror so is waking up for hours. I thought I did something that was worth living for. How do I write these notes? I'm called up by different ghosts. I wanna be part of the aristocracy in my living room. I wanna be the moon. 18 years ago, there's a Russian army general in corduroy with telescope. He's looking for you. 15 years from now, I'll wake up inside my mansion house. I wanna be a Barbie girl for you. There's a princess waiting for me in the sunset. Cover me in plastic, cover me in plastic bags. There's a princess waiting for me in the sunset. Cover me in plastic, cover me in plastic bags. Cover me in plastic, forget all the times before. Confused between walls and doors. The thing is that I wanna be perfect, but that can never be. Still I do it more. All of the things I did, I try not to be a kid. Now I wanna be like an amoeba. Forever I just wanna do a single thing. Centuries ago, there's a carpenter in Galilee who said we're all a fractal part of